All right, let's talk a little bit about the angle of attack, and that is essentially what we're talking about here, is that the angle that the club is approaching the ground to hit the ball at the time that it actually strikes the ball. Now, many golfers don't really understand the importance or relevance of angle of attack, but it really ties into everything. It ties into your swing plane, your path, your body movements, your angle, your force of movements. But at the end of the day, it's how the ball flies. It's going to dictate what kind of golfer you are and how you hit the ball. And one of the most important pieces of that equation is the angle of attack. And what happens for most golfers, because everybody tends to be too right side dominant, what the right side does is it has angles in it, right? You've got an angle here, you've got an angle in your wrist, you've got an angle in your shoulder. So this allows for a lot of vertical movement in the swing. So you can create kind of a chopping motion with the right arm pretty easily versus the left arm, which has got an angle in your wrist, but your elbow isn't doing anything. It should be staying perfectly straight. And the shoulder shouldn't be yanking down. It's falling down as you're pulling it down with your body, your weight shift, and your hip rotation. So, but the right arm, it tends to get a little overactive and tends to start doing this kind of motion. That's what creates an over-the-top move, but also changes the angle of attack. And the angle of attack is going to have a huge create a huge difference in how the ball is going to literally fly in the air. Because if you start coming down really steep with a lot of right side movement, the tendency is going to be for you to hit the ball really high on the face, because it's hard to control exactly where the ball hits the club on the face when it's working down so steeply versus coming in very, very shallow. And so when you tend to hit the ball high on the face, you tend to get a lot of flyers, you tend to get grass between the club face and the ball. The ball tends to take a little bit of spin off of it because you're using the vertical gear effect, which is going to reduce backspin, which on your 8-iron you may not necessarily want when you want to stop it close by the pin and not have it run off the back of the green. So ideally what you want is a very shallow angle of attack with your irons. And on average, the tour pros are only about 4 degrees down with every iron in the bag. Now obviously you go to a wedge, it goes up to about 5, you go down to 3-iron, it goes down to about 3. But on average, a 4-degree negative angle of attack is pretty ideal. And what is the average amateur? Well, this varies quite a bit, but what we see using the flight scope data, it's about 10 or 12 degrees down. And a lot of this comes from the idea of, oh, I want a lot of forward shaft lean and I want to really use my right side for power. And so you start getting the club working down really, really steep in an effort to deal off the club. But you don't want to deal off the club that much. There's got to be a balance between the two. There's no point in taking an 8-iron and turning it into a 4-iron. You're not going to be able to release the club enough. So at this point, the club still has another foot that it could release, but you're taking all that speed out because you're not allowing the club to release. So you want the club to get closer to vertical, have some shaft lean, just to deal off. But as you're coming through the ball more shallow, it allows you to get much cleaner contact. And that's the key to iron play, is making sure you hit the ball not only in the center of the face, but you reduce how much grass and dirt and stuff like that gets in between the club face and the ball when you hit it. But the last thing is, as you're coming through and you hit the ball a little bit lower on the face, it tends to lead to a little bit more of a penetrating trajectory and create a little bit more backspin on the iron shots, which helps them hold greens. So let's I'm going to do a couple examples here, and I want you to take a look kind of at the divots that I'm going to create based on doing a couple different things just with my body. I'm not going to do anything else. I'm just going to change my force of movement. So first swing, we're going to look at the angle of attack here. Is going to be just a normal 8-iron shot. And you'll see the grass barely skimmed it. My ball was here, my divot started up here, and it ended up about 6 inches in front of the ball. So my angle of attack there is going to be quite shallow. Now, if I change just my force of movement, I'm going to start coming at it from the top with my right side. Watch what the divot does. Now that ball flew perfectly straight, proper trajectory, good spin rate, etc. So we don't have any complaints with that shot. Now I'm going to use my right side to try and move the club down. I came over the top a little bit, hit a little bit of a pull cut, got a little open, and now you see this nice big trench that I dug that's working to the left. All I did was change where I started the swing down from. Instead of going to the top and focusing on shifting my weight and letting the arm fall back down, I took my right side and heaved at it, created a nice big chopping motion, hit a nice little pull cut, which is the least desirable shot for most golfers. So the key here is your force of movement has got to be right. Just the exact same stuff that I talk about in the RST 5-step system: body rotation, weight shift, letting the arms fall, taking the right side out of the equation. If you're tired of slicing, you have to pay attention to taking this right side out and letting the hands completely come off the club will also automatically shallow out the angle of attack. If you let your right hand come off early, I'll do an example here. So I'll just let my right hand completely come off. Now I hit a nice straight shot. A little bit steeper than I wanted. I push with my left thumb a little bit. But you get the idea. If you let this hand come off, the club can now shallow out because it doesn't have anything to force it to go steeper. So really, when you're working on changing your swing plane and your path and your angle of attack, the key is not focusing on the golf club. The key is moving from the right places. Using your rotation and your weight shift to help you shift and shallow out the swing plane on the way down is key. The steepening moves are almost all going to come from too much right side involvement. When you're swinging really steep and across the ball and taking these big trenches and worried about chunking the ball all the time, take your right hand off, follow the release videos, especially the VJ release video, and all of a sudden you'll watch you start taking nice, shallow, crisp dollar bill divots.